The year was 1865, and the frontier was a land of both opportunity and death. Snow lay thick as a quilt across the open plain, smoothing the sharp edges of wagon ruts and footprints left days ago. Wind cut through the cottonwoods like a bone saw, hissing warnings that no one in their right mind would hear, and no one desperate could afford to heed. Eliza Monroe gripped the reins tight in her cracked hands, her fingers wrapped in strips of wool torn from an old coat. The mare beneath her strained forward, breath billowing in clouds. Her second horse had collapsed at dawn, ribs showing like broken fence rails. Now she walked it behind the wagon, tethered and stumbling, refusing to die though its eyes had gone dull. The canvas top of the wagon rippled violently, nearly tearing off in the gale. Inside, two small bundles of cloth and fur shifted. Children. Her children. Josiah coughed weakly, again, and it rattled through her spine like a gunshot. Beside him, Annie didn't stir. Eliza's chest tightened, not from the cold, from something worse. She wouldn't check until they stopped. Couldn't bear to see lifeless eyes. Her breath fogged the air as she muttered prayer. Not the kind from church hymns. The kind you whisper when your soul's cracking and God feels like a man with his back turned. Through the trees, the sky darkened, though it wasn't yet sundown. Clouds stacked like gray fists above the Rockies in the west. They had to find shelter. Just a patch of dry ground, a fallen pine, anything. Just a little farther, she said, mostly to the wind. They'd left Bent Creek 3 days prior, heading toward Fort Lassen. The townsfolk had said she wouldn't make it. Called her mad. A woman, alone, with 2 young uns in wolf season. You'll be nothing but bones and bad luck, one man had spat. But Eliza had nothing left to lose and too much left to protect. A sharp snap echoed through the trees. The mare reared, nearly throwing her. Eliza clung to the reins, eyes wide. The second horse neighed wildly, pulling at the tether, nostrils flaring. Then the sound came again, a low, primal growl that didn't belong to any cattle or coyote. She dropped from the seat in one practice motion and grabbed a rifle from under the buckboard. A Spencer repeater, 7 shots. Maybe 8 if the hammer didn't jam. Her heart thudded. She peered into the trees. Nothing moved, just shadows. Then the silence was shattered. They came in fast, black shapes low to the ground, teeth flashing white, eyes like coals. Wolves. Not 2, not 3, at least 7, maybe more, silent until they weren't. The horses screamed. The tethered one went down first, shrieking as fangs tore into its flank. Blood sprayed across the snow like red ink. Eliza fired once. A clean shot. One wolf flipped midair and landed dead. But the others kept coming. She screamed, "Annie! Josiah! Under the blankets! Don't move!" The children obeyed without a sound. God bless them for that. Another wolf lunged. She shot it in the chest and ducked behind the wagon. The mare tore free and bolted into the woods, trailing leather and snow. Eliza didn't curse. No time for that. A growl behind her. She turned and saw yellow eyes, too close. The wolf leapt. She swung the rifle like a club and felt the crack of bone. It yelped, staggered, but didn't fall. Her second shot caught it under the chin. Blood steamed in the cold. 3 shots left. A scream tore from the wagon. Annie. Eliza spun. One of the wolves had climbed in through the back flap. She ran, boots slipping, threw herself onto the floorboards, and saw the beast pinning her daughter, jaws clamping down on a bundle of wool and flesh. She didn't aim, just jammed the rifle barrel into its ribs and pulled the trigger. Boom! The blast deafened her, made the world stutter. The wolf slumped, tongue lolling, blood soaking into the mattress. Annie saw beneath it unhurt. Eliza dragged the corpse off and checked Josiah, alive. Pale, feverish but breathing. A red streak down his cheek that wasn't his. She kissed his forehead. Her hands trembled. A howl rang out. Long mourning. Furious. They were regrouping. She had 1 shot left. The rifle clattered onto the snow as she reached for her belt and drew a hunting knife. Long, curved, bloodstained from before. She stepped out of the wagon, not shaking anymore, not pleading, I got 2 kids here, she said into the trees, her voice hoarse. Come on then. Another shape lunged. She met it head-on, slashed wide across the muzzle. The knife caught bone. She fell with it, rolling. It snapped at her shoulder. She stabbed it twice in the neck. Blood spurted. It convulsed and went still. She was on her knees, cut on her forearm, bleeding. The snow around her melted red. Another wolf stalked forward, lips curled back. And then, a whistle. Sharp, piercing. Not from any bird. Not wind. Everything stopped. The wolf froze mid-step. Then it looked to the trees and backed away. The others appeared, silent as ghosts. A full pack, circling, yet holding. And then he stepped into view. Tall, wrapped in furs the color of ash. A long beard framed a face carved in solitude. Weathered, unreadable. His eyes were pale blue, almost silver, and they scanned her with no fear. No pity. A great timber wolf walked beside him like a dog. Others followed. Some limped. Some bore scars. They obeyed him, not out of training, but something older. Older than guns. Older than words. Eliza didn't move. Couldn't. The man raised his hand. Just once. And the wolves dispersed, just like that. As if some unseen order had been given. A pact honored. The silence that followed was unnatural. He walked toward her, slow but without caution. Blood dripped from her arm. She swayed. He knelt beside her, didn't speak. His hand brushed hers. It was warm. Then the world went dark. She awoke to the pop of firewood and the smell of pine sap. She lay beneath a heavy fur blanket inside a crude lean-to made of branches and canvas. Her arm was bandaged tightly well. Her children lay curled beside her, fast asleep. She could hear their breathing. The stranger sat across the fire, sharpening a long blade. He wore no hat. Snow flecked his hair like frost. Eliza blinked, trying to rise. He didn't stop her, just watched. Her voice cracked. You saved us. He nodded once. Who are you? No answer. She pushed herself up, swaying slightly. The blade made a hiss as it slid along stone. I need to thank you. I don't know why you. He set the knife down and stood. His shadow stretched long across the fire. Behind him, the timber wolf entered the shelter, gave her one glance, and curled beside the door like a guard. Eliza stared at them both. I don't even know your name, she whispered. Still nothing. The wind howled outside, but inside the fire held. The stranger threw another log on it and sat down again. She lay back down slowly. Her fingers grazed the sleeping heads of her children. She stared into the flames, her body heavy, her soul heavier. Outside, the wolves waited, and so did the silence. But Eliza Monroe, widow, mother, and survivor of men and beasts alike, was no longer alone. Not in the way that mattered. In whatever test the land had given her, whatever judgment the wild had demanded, she had passed the first. Barely. But sometimes, barely was enough. Smoke drifted upward from the fire pit, curling toward the roof of the lean-to like it, too, was trying to escape the cold. Eliza sat with her back against a log, blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders, her bandaged arm cradled close to her chest. Outside, the wind had quieted some, though the cold remained sharp as a straight razor. She could still hear the wolves shifting in the snow beyond the clearing, restless, watchful. The children slept nearby, nestled under furs. Josiah's cough had dulled, his fever not gone, but less savage than the night before. Annie clutched a rag doll, her tiny fingers curled so tightly around its stitched hand, it seemed they might never loosen. Eliza's gaze lingered on them with the kind of tired love that knew how quickly the world could snatch what it gave. The man said nothing. He sat cross-legged near the fire, patching a tear in his coat with movements slow and deliberate. He hadn't spoken a word since he brought them here, wherever here was. Deep in the forest, she guessed. Too far from town, too far from anything familiar. Gray, Annie had whispered once, eyes wide, when the man passed by. His eyes are gray like storm clouds. The name had stuck, and he hadn't objected. Eliza cleared her throat. I'm not ungrateful, you know. You could have left us to die. No reply, just the sound of needle punching through thick hide. She tried again. You live out here, with wolves. You don't speak. You patch your own coat and boil pine needles for tea. She held up the steaming tin cup he'd handed her earlier. You got a name? A voice? Still nothing. Frustration pricked at her, though it softened as fast as it came. The truth was, she owed him everything, and something in his silence didn't feel cruel. It felt chosen. Later that morning, he led them to a cabin deeper in the pines, a squat, moss-covered thing built of hand-hewn logs. Smoke still rose from the chimney. Inside, it was warmer, lined with furs and rough shelves stacked with dried herbs, smoked meat, and mason jars filled with unknown things. The place smelled like cedar, smoke, and solitude. He showed them where they could sleep, on a wide pile of pelts in the corner. He made no move to claim space for himself, just set about tending to the wolves, who came and went without sound, their movements ghost-like. A scarred one with a torn ear nuzzled Josiah's hand. The boy laughed for the first time in days. Eliza watched it all, trying to make sense of the stranger. His face was unreadable but not empty. No madness there, nor meanness. Just the sort of quiet that grew from long years of listening more than speaking. That night, as the children slept and the fire cracked low, Eliza found herself speaking again. Not because he asked, but because the silence around him made it easy. "My husband was a good man," she said, staring into the fire. "Caleb Monroe. He had a voice like thunder and hands that always smelled like leather and grain." The man didn't move. He was shot defending a neighbor's barn. Raiders came through Bent Creek last month, burned what they couldn't steal. Caleb tried to stand him off. Took two with him before they brought him down. She paused, heart aching, then continued. "After the funeral, no one looked me in the eye. The men told me to remarry. The women brought pies, but never stayed long. Like I was cursed." Her fingers tightened on her cup. "So I packed what I could, strapped my babies in the wagon, and headed west. Figured I'd find something better, or at least I'd try. But the wolves came first." Still he said nothing. But he listened, really listened. And in that, she felt less alone. The days blurred after that. He fed them, roots, salted venison, rabbit stew thick with bitter herbs. When she offered to help, he let her, but only what she could manage. He'd watch as she wrapped poultices with clumsy fingers, nodding faintly when she did it right. Her arm healed slowly, but well. He changed the bandage with a gentleness that surprised her. Not once did he look away when she grimaced, nor did he speak. In return, she kept the children out from underfoot, swept the dirt floor, and tried to remember how to feel something besides fear. The cabin became a rhythm. Firewood, boiling water, feeding wolves, cooking meals, and always silence between them like a thread stretched taut but unbroken. One night, when a wind howled hard again, Eliza found him standing outside by a tree, staring into the black. "You looking for something?" she asked softly. He didn't turn, just raised a hand and pointed. A pair of yellow eyes blinked in the dark. Then another, and another. The pack. Watching. She stepped closer. "Why do they follow you?" He tilted his head, then finally spoke. "They remember who saved them." His voice was hoarse and used. A low rumble. She startled, not at the sound, but at the ache behind it. "Your voice," she breathed. "You can speak." He nodded once. "Why don't you?" He hesitated. "Because no one listens." She felt that sentence settle inside her like a stone. He turned to her then, and for the first time, she saw something unspoken pass between them. Not affection, not yet, but understanding. The next day, the trouble returned. Josiah was outside with Annie, stacking kindling near the woodpile. The wolves lounged nearby, dozing. Then came a sharp snap, a branch, heavy footstep. One of the wolves stood. Then a gunshot. The forest exploded into chaos. Eliza lunged for the door, heart hammering. Outside, Josiah screamed. Annie ran for the cabin. The wolves were growling, snapping at the trees. She saw him then, gray, already there, already in motion, rifle in hand. Calm. She saw the men too. 3 of them. Dirty, scarred, armed. One of them wore a jacket Eliza recognized instantly. A blue cavalry coat with a missing button. Her husband's. Her breath caught. Her knees almost gave. "Caleb's coat," she whispered, stunned. They were there. They hadn't just killed him. They'd taken from him. The trappers aimed to fire again, but didn't. A wolf leapt from the trees and sank its teeth into the lead man's leg. He shrieked. Another lunge from the right. Gray raised his rifle, fired once. A clean shot. The third man dropped. Blood soaked into the snow. The last one fled, howling. Eliza stood in the doorway, shaking, her hands white-knuckled around the doorframe. Her children clung to her skirts, sobbing. Gray walked forward, slowly. His shoulder bled. A gash from a knife, or a bullet that had only grazed. She rushed to him without thinking. He stumbled. She caught his arm. Inside. Now. He didn't argue. She laid him down by the fire, cleaned the wound. He didn't flinch once, just stared past her at nothing. You knew they were coming, she said. I saw the tracks yesterday. Why didn't you say something? His eyes met hers. I didn't want to scare you. A pause. I don't scare easy anymore, she said. He gave the faintest twitch of a smile. The next few hours passed in uneasy calm. The wolves circled the clearing, tense. Annie and Josiah sat by the hearth, eyes wide and silent. Eliza kept watch. Later that night, when Gray stirred from fevered sleep, she was there beside him, damp cloth in hand, watching the fire. You used to be a soldier, didn't you? She asked quietly. He nodded. Scout. For the army. What happened? He closed his eyes. They made peace with the wrong side. Let the wrong people burn. My wife was Cheyenne. They killed her when the land deals shifted. A long silence. So I left. Came here. Took in what the world threw out. She reached over and brushed his hair from his brow. It felt strange. Intimate. But not wrong. My husband died trying to do what was right, she said. And the men who killed him wore that same coat. Gray opened his eyes. They won't wear it much longer. No, she said, voice like steel. They won't. Outside, the wolves howled. But inside, something quieter stirred. A promise not spoken aloud. Not yet, but real. The fire crackled, and the wind carried the scent of snow and smoke, and something older still. Something that whispered the storm wasn't over. Not yet. The storm rolled in slow and black, crawling across the sky like ink bleeding through parchment. Snowflakes spun in its wake, soft at first, then heavy, blanketing the forest in silence. Inside the cabin, the fire was burning low, shadows licking the walls. Eliza sat on the edge of Gray's cot, gently pressing a warm cloth to the side of his neck. The wound wasn't deep, but it had bled more than she liked, and his fever hadn't fully broken. His skin burned hot beneath her fingers. Drink, she said softly, lifting the cup to his lips. He obeyed without speaking, throat bobbing as the pine tea slid down. Josiah and Annie slept bundled together across the room, arms entwined, their small faces peaceful. Too peaceful, Eliza thought. Children should not sleep so deeply in danger. But theirs was the sleep of the hunted, not the safe. Gray's eyes opened halfway. They'll return. She nodded. I know. His voice was low, the gravel of disuse rough around each word. They'll bring more men. Guns. Maybe dogs. I'm not running again. I didn't say run. His fingers moved, gesturing faintly toward a wooden crate near the hearth. Inside, beneath a pile of old pelts, lay a battered revolver, 2 boxes of shells, a powder horn, and what looked to be a crumpled hand-drawn map. You've been ready for this, she said. He didn't answer, just watched the snow swirl past the small window. She rose and crossed to the crate, taking out the map and spreading it on the floor. It showed the woods in charcoal strokes, paths, streams, trap lines, even elevations noted in faded script. She traced a ridge with her finger. They'll come down this way, thinking it's the easiest path. Gray nodded. You'll be too weak to fight. Another nod. Then, after a pause, he said, Not if I have help. Eliza looked up at him sharply. You want me to lead them? You said you weren't running. She stared at the fire for a long time before answering. Fine. Then we make this the last place they ever walk. Morning came quiet. The snow had stopped, leaving a white world behind, pure, if you didn't know better. Gray moved slowly but steady, his coat hiding the strain in his shoulders. Eliza carried the rifle. The revolver was strapped to her hip. She'd sewn a new sling for it last night, fingers blistering from the cold, and the tension. They worked in silence. Together, they set snares in the trees, strung narrow branches with trip lines, and covered pit traps beneath snow-dusted pine boughs. Eliza moved with purpose, jaw clenched, boots crunching. Her fear had frozen into something sharper. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was preparing for war. By noon, the wolves had returned. Eliza watched them gather on the ridge above the cabin, eyes glowing like stars beneath the trees. She couldn't count them all. 8, maybe 10. They didn't snarl, didn't growl. They waited, patient, loyal. They know, she asked. Gray nodded. They feel it in the air. Eliza looked at him. And what do you feel? He stared across the snow. The end. The first shot cracked the stillness near sundown. Eliza hit the ground behind the old stump she'd chosen as her blind. Her heartbeat surged in her ears, fingers gripping the rifle so hard her knuckles ached. 3 men emerged from the trees, rifles drawn. One had a long scar across his scalp. Another wore a hat too clean for these parts. The third, the one in Caleb's coat, walked like he already owned the land. Eliza sucked in a breath through her teeth. She aimed, waited. Behind her, the wolves had vanished. A bird called in the distance. A single sharp whistle. That was the signal. She fired. The first man fell sideways, screaming, his thighs split open. The second ducked behind a tree. The third froze, confused, then enraged. "It's her," he shouted. "The widow." Another shot rang out, grazed from the ridge. The man in the clean hat spun and dropped. The one in Caleb's coat turned and ran. "Coward!" Eliza snarled and followed. She moved fast, snow crunching beneath her boots, trees flying past. The wolf pack flowed like water beside her, silent and deadly. The man tried to climb the slope. Too slow. One of the wolves lunged, dragging him back down. Eliza stepped forward, rifle raised. He looked up, panting, bleeding, eyes wide. "I didn't know," he gasped. "Didn't know he had a family." Eliza's finger hovered on the trigger. He begged. The man choked. Begged for his wife. For his kids. "I know," she said and fired. The sound echoed long after the body fell. When she returned, Gray was seated against a tree, breath short, a smear of blood on his side again. She helped him up without a word. It was over. The forest was still. They burned the bodies at dawn. Smoke twisted into the pale sky, lifting the last of that bloody chapter with it. Josiah and Annie stood near the cabin, watching. Not crying, just watching. Eliza stood beside Gray, arms crossed against the cold. "They won't come back?" she asked. "No," he said. She nodded. "Good." They didn't speak for a while after that. Just watched the fire crackle and spit. Later that day, as the sun crept over the hills, Eliza sat with the children, telling them a story. A gentle one, about a deer that outran a winter storm. Gray listened from the doorway, the timber wolf beside him. Night came. Stars blinked above like silent witnesses. She walked out to the edge of the clearing, where the snow turned to shadow. The wolves were waiting. She turned to Gray. "You staying out here?" "For now." She stepped closer. "And us?" His eyes softened. "This is your land now, Eliza. You've earned it." She searched his face for the words he wouldn't say. Found something else instead. A steadiness. "You don't have to be alone anymore." He looked away. "I'm not." She understood then. The wolves. The woods. This silence, he'd made peace with it. But she hadn't. Not entirely. She walked back to the cabin, children asleep inside. Sat by the fire, listening to it hiss. In the stillness, she felt something shift. A closing. A beginning. In time, maybe she'd build something new here. A home not made of fear, but of grit. Maybe even love. Outside, a wolf howled low and long. And she smiled, because she finally knew where the wolves led. And she wasn't afraid to follow.